Tambalame, Sanjay Rinpoche, Chobalame, Tamchu Rinpoche, Dambalame, Gendu Rinpoche, Jamne, Kuncho Somla, Chechuku. Tamba Lane Meba, Sanjay Rinpoche, Tambalame, Sanjay Rinpoche, is a Shugoyate, Debe Sanjay, Tande Sanjay, Mount Junjur Sanjay, Donna Tusumje Sanjay, Tamchi Chi, 치송의 율 난점배 셈 타르바다 탐지체베 드베 두술 소 돈나 내루 치다와 쳔베 예시 셰체 진예베 쳔베 예시 쳔베 예시 세베 투제 제베 틸레 쿄베 눈투소 연대 삼죄렌데바 여바레라 틴델라 때네 대상제 남지 질 지된 참 제와 차자 시바당 단 대다라야 되네 레당 뇽몬바 개왕기 레뇽 춘당기 왕기 셈된 덴베케 셈된 창 매바 강바니다 강바 망보당 강바 매바당 단 dorno 당아라서 무슨 통 대바양한테니 릴라르다 타이 잠솔로 되는 부시 추신기를 냐이를 참매바히 가도다 남바 참매바요 바당 대신도 반부 부신소 너나 심쟁게 릭 참매바 남장 참매바 여바래라 되네 대다 내백에 싸 신뢰진 지대 나주지 심전 소화를 심전 다 심전 대로 제발낸 게 요래 제발 렌술에 알네 제발 공알레 때네 제발 죄라 때네 제발 주디 제발서 다 된데 심전 지리 장 매바지 여바래라 여바 참바래 대나네 깝니를 땅아 좀 좋아 미바래 좋아 미스겐테 지당 심전 현라 되나 좋아 미티 게 셈텔은 네바치바지야 바래 네바치바요래 대 네바치바요 발 때네 아주 롱아 예숨지 렉베 찰라 쯩바이나 타르바다 탐지침바 콤반 톱도요래 타르바 시겐테 레다 뇽몬바 출베 나와레 타르토바 타르바다 탐지침부 콤바야 토토요레 양 아주 롱아 예순 지고네 랭에바 사바이나 녜손 숨다 동네 녜손 숨 대달 메나야테 메다 라다 라마인케 르덴 자발레 양 자발렌 돈남 감성 릴도도 코르니 되게여바 손사 코르바파스 요라라 코르바티 출베 나와레 출능 출베 나와 게 텐데 임바레 테소사 Professor Catherine, can you translate?
To the precious unsurpassed teacher, the precious Buddha. So when we talk about the unsurpassed teacher who is the precious Buddha, what does this refer to? It refers to the Buddhas of the past, the present Buddha, and the Buddha of the future. In short, all of the Buddhas of the three times. What is it that they taught about? In general, about objects, outer objects which we can perceive, as well as the inner perceiving mind. They also taught about how to attain liberation and omniscience, the way to accomplish these. About the natural state, just as it is, as well as objects that can be known in all of their multiplicity. The Buddha has great wisdom and compassion, love, the capacity to benefit others through awakened activity. the capacity and power of the Buddha is truly inconceivable. And having that type of capacity, then, the Buddha saw that there are millions of worlds, hundreds of millions of worlds, and within those worlds live embodied beings, sentient beings. And those beings fall under the sway of karma and the negative emotions and deluded experience, confused experience. These beings, embodied beings, sentient beings, are countless, limitless. There are so many types. Some have 2 legs, some have many legs, some don't have any legs, all different kinds of forms. If we just think about the beings that we ourselves are able to perceive through our direct perception, there are wild animals on the land, in the forest. There are animals who live in the ocean, all kinds of sea creatures as well as fish. The colors and forms of these sentient beings are countless, limitless. All of the bugs, every kind of sentient being. In short, there is no limit to the types of sentient beings. There is no limit to sentient beings. And those beings live in a world. We talk about the outer vessel-like world. And then we speak also of the sentient beings who are the inner contents of that world. Those beings are born. All of us, we are born different ways of birth. We could be born from a womb or from an egg, from heat and moisture, or through miraculous methods. These are the ways in which it is possible to be born. But in short, the types of sentient beings are truly countless, and you actually know all of this. And you also know that among those different types of sentient beings, we are human beings. We are born as humans, and compared with other types of sentient beings, humans are more powerful in the sense that our mind is more powerful. Our mind is quite powerful, and that means that when we do something physically, verbally, and mentally that is good, when we use our body, speech, and mind for positive activities, we can, through that, accomplish liberation and omniscience. What does it mean to be liberated? Liberation is liberation from what? It's liberation from karma, from the negative emotions, and from deluded experience. That's what it means to be free or to be liberated. So we can, if we use our body, speech, and mind for positive actions, then we can achieve liberation and omniscience. If, on the other hand, we engage in negative actions, in the worst case, we would be reborn in the 3 lower realms, experiencing that suffering. But even if we're not born in the 3 lower realms, once we're born into samsara, even if it's in the higher realms, what happens is that we're born, and then we die, and then we're born, and then we die, again and again and again. We take birth, we cycle through the 3 realms of samsara, taking birth among the 6 classes of beings. And that's what it means to cycle around in samsara. And that is what a sentient being is. We say samsaric beings are those who take birth again and again in samsara. And our experience as samsaric beings is a deluded experience. We are deluded.
Ngazu draw me, but make it lepasana, make it sem. Miss Sem the Shidaki, Jangbo, Tumbo, Namju de Dembachere, Namju de Dembachere, Milu Latene, me Lutan Dil Latene, Tarba, Dumduk Loyana, Taba Dubeki, then Milu de Chok to Chobayabare, Milu. The Tarba Dupsul the Candice Dukure Sana, Sanjela Japsu Chevatan. Chola Japsu, Gendula Japsu, Jamne Gojo Somlet, Japsu, Jata, Dontra, Bomtra, Mobosana, want to Tarbat to Yamari. Sonum just saw something Mishabas, Zogere, Gilbatagere. 달바 토버 제발라 톱술때 다 장고하래 톱술때 장고하래 톱술때 장고도 તે શેષા ખાગી નાલી યારે સના તાંબી છ નાલા 치송의 일진 남샤 남진 집에 샘진 남샤 타르바타 탐시친 비두비 둡술ken 남샤소 14보 카살보 대시 제바체나 녜신 종초초 로아메바 체마 뎀바 따텔라 담배추 송요레 텐텔라 쪼바 덤발라메 산지rum보치 쪼발라메 담주rum보치 쪼바서 가릴려 제르 녜송을 산지기 추게 나느야 로브롭지 냠슬라나 녜송 숨라 녜송 숨게 르데 랑가 말해 로브롭 생게 가리레서는 메게와 추삼지 빵톤나 르지고는 소초바 마진발렘바 델로 나 그거는 준 참마 식수 이지고네 납셈 너셈 록다 오 대답게 메게와 추티 메게 주봉 시간테 메게 주빵 좀때 개와임바 메게와 주빵 이렇게 표 가려래 선나 카톡 표현텔에 나랑서 로아 메다메 배 참보차그래 저기 저라 나랑서 직사 공도 내봐 짜와니는 제가 말해 샘 시와 잠보 차도요 텐델 때네 낭펜수 침라이나야란다 침셀라이나란다 도나 수당 테나야 되네 지가예레 또예레 tum보야래 대여바에나 랑지바야래 셴지바야 라셰 꿀라 대지용이야 카도 펜파대야래 때 락버도 다제네 마시바지 하야요 말해 제네 마시바레레 니라 하요나 땡아야 당연히 봐 선반이 초그레 쓰기래 대송 제네 라라 마시바 찍자 매바레 태송장 고고 말해 대송자 시와 시간티 르 라유베 옥티 체마타도 시와 시간데 대 시와 시간데 남이요 땡땡면도 안맹알라 치와다 제마타도 치와다 달라 치와다 되네 카시 네 매발라 치와다 카시 네 연어양요 체령보 대바서 돌나 딱바템 받자와야 니네요 말해 된들 때네 던 돌나 뒤시게 최탐지 메닥바임베 마체 로베게 체데네 되네 롱셉게 마르메 따보 롱케셈라 마르벤 샤요는 간데 용사를 제바야고 자다 테나시제 엠바르 테소사 안행아주다 쪽 시간대 미게와 쭈 빵토바예나 냐로와 예다 돈로 때 녀손손 그 루데 랭가 말해 다 녀손손의 냐로와 시간에 통연민도 예다 통연민도 라바예나 냐로와 예다 때 아주 직대식 함달이요 메카시 냐로와 나신게 때 룰라 나사 semla dumel kashi yeda nashi sekom mebam sekom samituba yoyor te shindu milale ken ten tundro nashi dongan yoya ta ngazo usun yong shemba de gara tenre sonza ngazo sanje peki jinju ke tambe chu chesul te chopa se ke khane chokore sana 녀송 잡고 쪄봐지 타나야 녀송 숨을라 녀송 숨게 르데 맞아봐지 제야래 대 만족게 랑렌 탐지지 나네 갈치쇼 랑렌 탐지 나네 다 온전 잡어 팀 냠스 말라와 탑 매봐지 대 냠스 나나 녀송 숨게 르데라 매져봐지 가서 인지 매지 잡어래 대쌈치 팽가 말해 다 티간에 개와주 냠솔라나 때 토리 메당 메일루데 사일루데서 제요 다때 대나네야 밀류 잠보와 잠마인바 잠보와 생한테 때는 메일루지 되지 퍼소서 단단하게 되지 퍼소서 대여 롱조서 잠대바 대여 통통 제가 하하호스 맞다 되네야 강가 잘네 야 남시 떨매 참고요래 대손장 되네 밀루 잠보와 마인바 밀루 체퍼 파파치 chapra pakwa sayante tarbata tamchi chenpa drumdi ke loyo kenchi ngenso som ke dongal söde meba yeba ha kowachi tori metan lada lama yenki deji yang zai silba tabo chui boa tabo namken jasur tabo ganga meta garangshi nyingba meba yinpe yinsul yabochi shen toba yina an tarbata tamchi chenpa sayante druptu gore tarba tar sayante dagin kondu shoba nashi tan donna ledo nyomong tunas shigre tege nane zawa te mari nyinsin le tarko yor na mari nyinsin le tarko mari nyinsin le tar gutu tar sulte tanga lobjon cha gore lobjon che ne 담배 쳐 sayante ta koncho som nane tak 갈치셔도 가르쳐 담배 쳐들 얘나야 담배 쳐도 땡캔지면 나가서 마셔서 땡캔데 상제리 대 담배 쳐대 제마치시 야보 줍터 받자랑 가서 줘주고 저 개베 신이 생한테 맨 메타 메바 텔은 젠발라메 겐조로 뭐체세 개베 털을 때네 랑 개바 두펜치 차그래 딕베 털을 때네 랑 대파 체겐치 차그래 저 생한테는 내가 좀 봐요 어 텐데스 투로 샤로나 담배 쳐 줍술 당보티 몇개 주번 글래 신도 내지 갈좀 버래 대소 투로 샤로나
We are humans, and as human beings, our minds are sharp, we're smart, we're skillful. And that's why a human body is the basis for, or can be the basis of the support for attaining liberation. If we use our human body correctly, it can be a support for attaining liberation if we have that aspiration. And it's actually the best support for training in the Dharma and practicing to attain liberation, this precious human body. How do we do that? How do we attain liberation? We begin by taking refuge in the Buddha, taking refuge in the Dharma, taking refuge in the Sangha. These three refuges. But if we just repeat that, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. If you repeat that 100 times or 1,000 or 100,000 or 1,000,000, just repeating that over and over again, you will not attain liberation. You will definitely gain a lot of merit, and certainly you will purify a lot of negativity, but that's not how to attain liberation. We need to know how to attain liberation. So how do we know how to attain liberation? Where do we learn that? We learn that by studying the Dharma. What is taught in the teachings of the Dharma? A presentation of outer objects which are perceived, a presentation of what the inner perceiving mind is like, as well as a presentation of how to attain liberation and omniscience. This is explained and taught in great detail in the teachings of the Dharma. And for that reason, the teachings of the Dharma are also such that when we investigate, when we examine them, if we just check a little bit, we are able actually to gain a sense of real confidence and trust and certainty into the teachings such that we can put them into practice and pursue the path that leads towards liberation. So we say that the unsurpassed teacher is the Buddha, right? But we also say that the unsurpassed protection is the Dharma. So protection, what does that mean actually? What does it mean for the Dharma to be our protection? If we practice the Dharma on just a coarse level, very, very roughly, if we practice the Dharma, then that will protect us from taking rebirth in the three lower realms. What does it mean here to practice the Dharma on a coarse level? It means to abandon, to avoid the 10 non-virtues. So physically, not to kill, not to steal, not to engage in sexual misconduct. Verbally, not to lie, not to speak harshly, not to speak divisively, not to idly chatter, gossip. And with our mind, not to be covetous, not to hold ill will, and not to have wrong view. If we can avoid these 10 non-virtues, that itself is virtuous. Avoiding the 10 non-virtues is itself virtuous. Is this beneficial? Yes. How is it beneficial? Why is it beneficial? What are the benefits of this? Well, even just right now, immediately, we can experience the benefit of avoiding the 10 non-virtues in the sense that we will be able to get along better with people, the people around us, right? Our family, our neighbors, we won't get angry at them. We won't speak harshly to another. We won't harm one another. So simply engaging in the practice of abandoning these 10 non-virtues will bring about a situation where we feel happy because we get along with those around us and we're able to interact with them in a positive way. And so that will bring benefit both to ourselves as well as to other people right away. It brings us happiness. Also, it's important that we acknowledge that everyone who has been born, every single being who has been born has died. There's no one left who was born and did not die. There's no such person that has been born and did not die. And if there had been one, then we might have the chance to think, well, maybe I could be the second one. Maybe I could be next. If there had been one person who had been born, one being who had been born and didn't die. But that just isn't the case. There is no one. There is no being who has been born and has not died. We don't have to have any doubts about this. There's no need to doubt it. And so that means that death is certain for us and for everyone. And what death means, we talk about death when the breath stops moving in the body, right? When the breath stops moving in the body, then we call that death, dying. And this is something that happens to all of us, but there's no certainty about when it happens. Some people die while still in the womb. Others die immediately after being born. Some people die in their youth. Others live to be old. Some people get sick and die. Some people don't get sick at all and die suddenly without becoming ill. So the circumstances of death are really uncertain. We really just don't know how it is that we might come to die. And that is simply how it is. And it's not just us, but actually all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. So this is how we can be certain of the fact that we're going to die. The fact is that everything conditioned is impermanent. But even more than that, this human life is said to be like a candle in the wind. If you set a butter lamp or a candle out in the wind, it could just go out at any moment, right? What happens? Any minute it could blow out. And so that's what our life is like. We should keep that in mind. And again, we talk about the Dharma as the unsurpassed protection. What does it mean to protect? It means that if we abandon the 10 non-virtues, we will not be reborn in the 3 lower realms. We can be protected from birth in the 3 lower realms. And some of you might think, well, okay, you talk about the 3 lower realms, but hell beings, hungry ghosts, pretas, I don't see them. You might have some doubts about that, but just look around you in the human realm. There are plenty of humans whose lives are hell. Their experience of the human realm is a hellish one. They suffer from extreme heat or extreme cold like the beings in the hell realms. Or there are some humans in the human realm who experience a life that is like that of the pretas. They don't have access to food. They don't have access to drink, to water, liquids, and so they're suffering. We can also look around in the world, and we can see that there are humans that also live and suffer very similarly to beings in the animal realms as well. This is just what we can see ourselves directly in our own experience. So when we say that the Dharma protects us, what does it mean that the Dharma protects us? Well, on the one hand, it means that if we avoid the 10 non-virtues, we will be protected from birth in the 3 lower realms. This should be an extremely important part of our practice. It is an indispensable part of our practice. It's like a preliminary that we just can't avoid. We have to train in this practice, this fundamental practice of abandoning the 10 non-virtues. And just this, of course, is going to bring some benefit. And then if we are reborn in the higher realms, it's not really just enough to be reborn in the higher realms. Ideally, we need to be reborn in a human body, and not just an ordinary human body, but a precious human body. Because if we're born as just an ordinary human in an ordinary human body, and we spend all of our time and energy being totally caught up in the sense pleasures, wanting this, wanting that, pursuing this pleasure, sense pleasure, pursuing that pleasure, and we spend all of our lives just caught up in that kind of enjoyment, well, then what happens is that we're going to die, and we won't have brought up, we won't have done anything really truly beneficial. And so therefore, it's not enough for us simply to have an ordinary human body. We need to have a precious human body. A precious human body which can be the support for attaining liberation. Again, we need to be reborn in a human form, avoid birth in the lower realms to take birth in a precious human body. But even if we're born as a human, it's important that we also give rise to a sense of renunciation for all of samsara, not just the 3 lower realms. So we should regard the pain and the suffering of the 3 lower realms as intolerable, just absolutely unbearable. But not just that, we should think about the pleasures of the 3 higher realms as being like a dewdrop on a blade of grass, a bubble on water, just a rainbow that appears in the sky and fades away. It doesn't last, right? So we should acknowledge, we should think about the pleasure of the 3 higher realms as being not truly meaningful, as really being pointless. And then what that does is it causes us to give rise to the aspiration or the wish to attain liberation. And again, liberation here means liberation from karma, liberation from the negative emotions, and liberation from deluded experience. We have to become free from ignorance, from dualistic ignorance. That is ultimately what we must become free from. And how do you do that? Well, you start by learning the Dharma. You start by studying the Dharma. Of course, we need to take refuge in the 3 jewels. But which among the 3 jewels is the most important for us? It's the Dharma. The Dharma is what really protects us. But the teacher, the one who taught the Dharma, is the Buddha. So we take refuge in the Buddha. And in order to practice effectively, we also need companions on the path. And our companions on the path are the Sangha. So we say the unsurpassed guide, the Sangha, the precious Sangha. It's really important to have virtuous friends. If you have virtuous friends, that leads you on a path towards virtue. If you have non-virtuous friends, that leads you on a path towards non-virtue. It really makes a difference who you spend your time around. So this is really something important. Please keep it in mind. Please keep in mind here that the first part of our Dharma practice is to abandon the 10 non-virtues. Please keep this in your heart.
담배 쳐대 지침바지 생고나 되는 림보지를 장바치고 와래 가르사나 산지 쳐대 삽제니 삽바테가 자쳐만도 삽제테 뺀나 타이 잠촌다고 빼샤나 삽제니데 tinda 임바레테 대 고전순 돌 뒤때 셰나 장나 콜레라버레 셰레라버레 이나야 랑레 따르거리 랑레 따라라 레라바야 마리 랑레 따라야데 쉔드네지 칼좀바리 아깝깔랑아주 장네만 보지 장 셰네만 보지 셰 랑레틀 랑레야보 따르마톱나 아니 카테 오 당니 나라 냠도 제면도 냠도 메제베 잡아테 랑레 마타바레 랑레 따름 냠도 지그래 빼나 제파초 kindergarten라 담보 샤도와 테네 랍다 테네 토르 랍다 림베레베 장고도 빼 대신도 아주 담보 산지게 송게 닝보다부터 야야야야 아주 칸이 쪄 셈네 예바체 니샤 축지기나 라레 따르기도에 면도 랑게 제바체 산지 송아리 Rani dying te Rani Ranchi Gyan is. Leg the Nyapa Kanchepa Rani Ranki Pangbo yin sonare. The Sanche Peke Chuluke, Yamsa Lansote, Dasikente, Chilaya Mare. Mari incident to dar. Mari incident then Egap Dungal. Chada Moso Lasso Benyam Toso Mabochi Jenny. Then the Ran Longa Yesum took, Shanky Longa Yesum took, Mache Beketin. You doing job, Ganga get some took to the children. Tell some Rani rank dying days. Rani rank and go to Carris. Image is shit. Yes, maybe shit. Leg the Nyapa can't chapasa. Mari needs want to do it. You may shit, Yamso Lanka do it. To sue shingere. Something around Shingarama to sue Hakoma. That one at Lama Yamtochi, one shen you can. Chero Yamtochi, one shen you can. That is a chance to get a matter. Sue Hakoma. Carson, Gogjure. Marana Mari needs a yena, me don't touch it. Image is shit. La cognoto son yapo mena yen don't touch it. Take a check, cigarette. Tender son some rank date, ranking country, range, in being insulted and the castle sugar. That head of the Yams of Langsul Telatang in Taki Sugar was Sanjay Karma Rabri Marmeta, Juma Silva Chubur, Milam Lot, and Tinta for Duchechunum that the ta said Sanjay could shoot in Yams Lion a tambo, meta, mebate. Duchek chutam, Jimitapa in being insulted. Yaya, Samne, Semtele Ya, Duchetamchi Metapa Redu, Jacha Jarendu, Karma Rabri Marme Lasobat, Petinashi, Toya Terra Rendu, Ranki, Luloncho, Nyan Korba, Ka Chinichi Yoba, Ka Chinichi Sapa, Tamjian Metapa, then Lude Chame Lunda, Ludan, Ranki Sapiki, Overtamchi Chame Lundava. Something in the Rawan Meba. That comes from drip to Lenuk Uncle Tenny. That is the Javalenga do or something. Take on somebody down the Tango, Karma Rabri Marmeda, Juma Silver, Milam Lota, Duchechunum Deta, Shokaya, Sabata, the Lamsa, Metapati temperature. Tinin drone do Sanyal Kanka Capsuya Meta. The Chetamchi Metaba, saying, some tumna, Tela, Sambe, Meta Hila Korkent, Chevari. Meta Hila Tani, me Korken, Metax and Megakent, sick Metax, said the Shua, said Megabate, Chitin Pa, said Jibala 10 day. Gangan Jingo, in Jigumare, some Jose Longi, Corba. Gangata, Jigmari, Ding, something, Jambachi, Chapachi, Shabachi, there you are. Oh, Chamata, that Gangaji. Kang Ching is Sapati Shankiri. Sanjay Sombanashi. Ka Chinichi Sapati Shankiris. Ka Chinichi Shela Jinbati Marangiris. Kang Chinichi Rangi Sapatang, Sumatang, Sung. Bella Sopa Chene, Ka Yabate, the Shankiris, Daku Shankiri, sorry. This was Meta, said the Yaya, some tumna, Semtel Johala, Chichiria, Korva Sente, Korala, Nimbo may say the Karit Lagutua. Oh, Nimbo may be mellow, Namkin Jasu Drava. Did that. Then the Digi Longer saying to Ganga Namkin Jasu Drava, one red door, Tapatama Midua. Pasodo, make it up. I'm joking, Yena, Metapa be insult, that chick nason in she's that much more mango. To work necessary. Tatigala, ten chunum tam Julie Chum. That is somebody. Tejutation ship person, Jolongo, Bakayan, Bagajon, Dickson. The Pachian message, gave up for some sovereignty, rank as something also. Then a Sanjay Dabayin, Sanjay Chuti, Tateri, Dortuna, Tinal Manduvan, our enemy. Sapa, 상하기 쳐 야쳐 대바침be 살람케 남샤 돈나 택바 숨기 쳐기 따와 곰바 쩌반 저부데 쩌바 참 맞춘 돌드네 메가와주테 뽕 개와주테 메가와주테 독다도 삼네 네 독차보치 따보 삼네 뽕 개와주테 맨지나는 맨 축도 쳐봐나시 셈네 당도 랑 니체 따랑 셈네 용순 둘소라 따랑 셈그 용순 둘술 좀 당보 메닥바테 같이 줄이 아버지나 되게 저를 내가 대여 롱주 센터 이거 면도 셈텔 아 텐트지 쫄랑라 질래 그래 쫄랑라 쫄래 그래 어텔 때네 안에 녀면도 똑바 제당 제작 녀면도 똑바 제당 라버트 착센스에 됐다 코르베 잡아 착센대로 착센 근데봐도 마 자유 그래 또대 착센들이 롱주 망보여네 착센면은 되게요 롱주도 가야매 장보게 장포를 착바체바당 추보게 되는지 너를 롱주 자침벌레 착바체는 착바 임비 착 직바치자리 너를 롱주에는 착바면은 되게요 뭐뭐 뇽뇽 좀 받으면 착바 유에는 되겠다 랭해봐서 되네 사기요 대해서 착신기 쳐봐도 막 쫑고요 착신도 빽깔하고요 원주로도 착신들이 뒤잡아 뒤다 말이 바라봐 근데 당벌 남사 말이 봐서는 아주 고쳐야 깔락하고요 대선상 알아서 녀모바 나네 단다 카톡 야야 녀모바 제한테 착신들이 소라 차바체 소 달라 차바체 질라 차바체 롤라 차바체 렉샬라 차바체 다 근데 차바체 착신 왕복고 네 셰바카토나 착신 추추 오자데 데 레사거든 같이 착신 수체나 뒤지게 되네 되게 다 랭게 바사요 그래서 착신 기초와도 맞죠 거요 착신 기초와도 좋아셔서 말람 잡나에 좀 말해 ndemba mambo dene nga chakshen tewa de ma chung ko mambo nga dana ya yo mare tene ta chakshen tewa de ma chung ko de chakshen shese ki yul korang yul ta ramna midemba deme to ta khor tedar ma sho na ko medak ba ramna 템버 마토 코라토 왔는 백사르 템버 마토 람사삼 제깔하요 메닥베 삼베 삼술지 야야야 제톱나 텔라테네 착신 찌르녀만 버떡서 제당 제라도 깜데를 알아서 둘로 저렇게 착신기 네바드마 자데 대소자 산제기 두시 탐제제 나는 초도 줄바 메닥베 두시오 손도와 오 메타빈도시에서 같이 약부지 줄이 째나 되는 완전원에 타네 샘자라시 그 샘들 주라치 탭도래 샘들은 주라치 탭데 류가르게 메트레 샘데 가르게 샘데다 만다바지 샘들 주라치 탭이 거마 녀마 똑바째다 제가 강가마 카트 되겠지 샘들 러차지 여봐 샘들 당차지 여봐 샘들 장부 정보 말다 만라바지 랑케 싱거래라 셴케 싱거래 랑신 이가케 셴야 바지 차고요르 텐데 소자 텐데 텐체소 강가라 슈야라 메탁스데 야야 투로 코르토바 나로나 데 신도데제 대한 칼보체레
If we want to come to know about the Dharma, there's quite a tremendous amount to learn. Why? Because the Dharma is extremely profound and extremely vast. the profound aspect is the aspect of the tantric teachings. The vast aspect is that of the sutras. Sometimes it's said to be like an ocean. That's the example that's given. So vast, so profound, like an ocean. The Dharma is like that. And it's perhaps not so difficult to learn, to know about some of these points. But what's much more difficult is to put it into practice. The Dharma, practicing the Dharma, it's a lot more difficult than just knowing about it, understanding it. And sometimes we think, oh, well, I've learned the Dharma a lot. I studied a lot and I've learned a lot. But if we don't actually put the Dharma into practice, then we might think to ourselves, how come I'm not gaining experience and realization? It's just not happening for me. I wonder why. Well, the reason is because you're not practicing. That's why. Practicing the Dharma is what actually allows us to gain experience and to gain realization. We have to make progression through those trainings. So it's like, for example, first we start with kindergarten, then we go to school, then gradually we finish a regular schooling and go to college and so on. We have to progress through that. And so just like that, it's important for us to understand what the real essence of the Buddha Dharma is, but it's not enough for us to just understand that. We have to actually apply it. We have to put it into practice. And it's taught that the Buddha said actually that you are your own enemy, you're your own protector. Whether you have done good or bad, you are your own witness. You're the one who knows. So this is how it is in the Buddhist tradition. The enemy is not someone out there. The enemy is inside of us. The enemy is our own dualistic ignorance. That's the real enemy. And that dualistic ignorance gives rise to attachment and aversion and stupidity and all of those afflictive emotions. And what happens when we have the afflictive emotions is that it disturbs us. It disturbs our body, our speech, and our mind. It also disturbs the body and the speech and the mind of others as well. In fact, not just people close to us, but everybody all around us, everyone who's near us, they're disturbed when we are afflicted by the negative emotions. And that's why it's taught that you are your own enemy. Your own enemy is inside of you, your afflictive emotions. But you're also your own protector. That's also what the Buddha said. And what is that protection? The protection is non-dual wakefulness. That is the protection that we have within us as well. And whether you have done, whether you engage in virtue or non-virtue, that's something that you know, right? You're your own witness. So am I involved in dualistic ignorance? Am I caught up in that? Or am I remaining within the state of non-dual wakefulness? Who knows that? I know. You're the only one who knows that about yourself, right? Maybe you have a teacher who has experience in realization and therefore is clairvoyant, or maybe you have some Dharma friends who have experience in realization and they're clairvoyant. Maybe it's possible that someone else like that might know. But apart from that, other people don't know whether you're caught up in dualistic ignorance or whether you're remaining in non-dual wakefulness. You know yourself. We are our own witness. So we are the one who knows. And it's also possible that outwardly someone might pretend like they're remaining in the state of non-dual wakefulness, but inwardly be caught up in dualistic ignorance, right? It's possible that what it looks like on the outside is not what's going on inside. And therefore, that's why we have to witness ourselves. We're the one who really knows what's going on in our own experience. And so in this case, then, as the Buddha taught, we are our own enemies. You are your own enemy, and you are also your own protector. It's very clear what that means. The Buddha also said, look at all conditioned phenomena as being like a twinkling star, like an optical illusion, like a butter lamp, flickering butter lamp, like a mirage, and so on, like a flash of lightning, like a dewdrop on the blade of grass. All of these things, the Buddha said, we must view all compounded phenomena as being impermanent in this way. This is how we should regard all compounded things. Just like that, like a star, or like an optical illusion, like a butter lamp, and so on. We have to know that every compounded phenomenon is impermanent. Whatever it is that we have that we care about around us in our lives, our friends, our family, maybe we're attached to our wealth, to our possessions, to our position, our fame, and so on. All of those things that we try to accumulate and gather around ourselves, these are all impermanent. And in a single moment, at the moment of death, you leave all of those things behind and your body. All of it. Everything you've accumulated, everything that you've gained, everything that you've gathered together in this life and this body, in a single instant, you drop it and leave it behind. And the mind, without any kind of control, is blown by the winds of karma to take rebirth in the 3 realms of samsara among one of the 6 classes of beings. That's what happens when we die. And so it's very important for us to acknowledge that impermanence, to acknowledge that all conditioned phenomena are just like those examples that the Buddha taught. So right when you wake up in the morning, think that to yourself. Think every conditioned phenomenon is like a star. It's like an optical illusion. It's like a lamp. It's like a mirage. It's like dew. It's like a flash of lightning. All compounded phenomena, all conditioned phenomena are like that. They're all impermanent. And reflect, right when you wake up in the morning, reflect for a moment on impermanence. Think about the fact that all of the experiences of human beings are also impermanent. Our happiness, our sadness, right? Our pleasure and pain, all of those things are impermanent. So if you can really bring that to mind, reflect on impermanence and keep that in mind, it's extremely beneficial. And actually, somebody who thinks about impermanence is a Dharma practitioner. Someone who doesn't even like to think about impermanence, who doesn't like the word impermanence, who doesn't like to hear the word death, that kind of person is not a practitioner. So this is how we should begin our day, reflecting upon impermanence. The world itself is impermanent. The whole world, actually, the word for world is a support for destruction. It will be destroyed, the Tibetan word, jikten. Everything within the world will be destroyed. It's not going to remain. And it's important for us to acknowledge that. But we often don't, even though the world itself is not going to remain, even though it's impermanent. We somehow still think, oh, well, no, it probably will just stick around for a while. This is me, this is mine, this is my family, my friends, things that belong to me. These things, they'll last, they're going to last. And we have so much attachment and fixation and clinging and grasping to all of those things. But in the very moment that our breath stops, we leave it all behind. All of it, we leave it behind. So you gathered it, and then it becomes everything that you gather together, everything that you accumulate, that belongs to other people. This is what the Buddha said. Everything that you accumulate, that belongs to others. What you give away, that's yours. That's what he taught. The Buddha taught that. Everything that you gather, that you accumulate, that you keep and protect and try and make more of, increase and hold on to, that belongs to others. But what you give, that's yours. So it's very important for us to remember impermanence. And the benefit of remembering impermanence and contemplating impermanence is that we become free from such strong attachment. And the way that happens is that when we think about impermanence, it makes us feel sad. We have a sense of sadness, a feeling of sadness. We look around at everything in samsara and we realize that it's not that meaningful. It's not really meaningful, that all of these seeming pleasures and riches and enjoyments and wealth and all of that, once we acknowledge that these things aren't going to last, that they're impermanent, then it doesn't seem so meaningful anymore. And we hear all sorts of situations in the world. This person got sick, that person died. All sorts of sad, unpleasant, inauspicious things happen all the time. But if we know that things are impermanent, then we can see, oh, that's just how it is. Actually, everything really, truly is impermanent. And this is beneficial for us to keep in mind, to continually remember and keep in mind. The Buddhists also taught that all phenomena arise from causes, and the great sage taught about how to bring those causes to an end. He taught, the Buddha taught, do not engage in any evil, accumulate virtue excellently, and tame your own mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. That's it. That's the real heart, the real essence of the Buddha's teachings. It's not something else beyond that. Of course, it's extremely profound. The teachings of the Vajrayana, extremely vast. The sutra teachings, there's so much there. The view, the conduct, the meditation, the fruition, according to all of the systems of practice. But it comes down to, all of it comes down to just this. We should avoid evil. Don't engage in any non-virtue. That means avoid the 10 non-virtuous actions as if they were poison. Gather virtue in an excellent way. That means take up the practice of the 10 virtues as if they are medicine. Treat them like medicine and practice them. And tame your own mind. How can you tame your mind? Well, one way is to contemplate impermanence. This helps us tame our minds. Because once we acknowledge that all of the sensory pleasures are not truly meaningful, then we feel a sense of sadness about the samsaric condition, and that reduces our negative emotions because our attachment is reduced. Our attachment decreases. And that attachment is actually the root of samsaric existence. And so when we can reduce that attachment, it brings great benefit. If someone has a lot of money, somebody's very wealthy, and they don't have attachment to that wealth, then it's not really such a problem. It's not a problem at all, actually, to have wealth if we're not attached to it. If there's a beggar, somebody who's extremely impoverished, and if that person has attachment to their possessions, and then if there's a rich person who's attached to their possessions, the attachment is identical. It's not different. It's attachment in both cases. And attachment is a problem in both cases. So if someone is wealthy but they're not attached, that's not a problem. If someone has very little but has a lot of attachment is still a problem. Because attachment causes us to engage in non-virtuous deeds. So it's essential that we contemplate impermanence as a way of reducing our attachment. And it's hard to reduce attachments, right? But we must do this. And attachments also, it's one of the afflictive emotions, but it's the one that's the most manifest. Of course, the real root of attachment is ignorance. That's really where it comes from. But the attachment itself is what appears most obviously in our experience, that attachment. And it's hard for us perhaps to understand at first that ignorance is the root cause of our afflictive emotions. And for that reason, then, it's important to try and do whatever we can, like contemplating impermanence, to reduce attachment, which is the more manifest form of those afflictive emotions. And when we have attachment, we have attachment to all sorts of things, right? To forms and sounds and smells and tastes and textures, right? All of those kind of attachments. Whenever we have a sensory experience, when our sense consciousnesses, the gates of the senses are open, then we tend to feel attached to the objects that we experience through that. And when we have that kind of attachment to the sensory objects, that results in negative karma, and that negative karma results in suffering. And so it's essential that we reduce our attachment. How? What about praying? If we just pray to be free from attachment, is that going to completely remove our attachments? No. We're not going to get rid of our attachment by praying to be free from attachment. What about doing a lot of recitation, reciting a lot, maybe saying a lot of mantras? Is that going to reduce our attachment? No. What do we need to do to reduce our attachment then? Well, it's to regard the objects of attachment, in the best case, regard the objects of our attachment as unreal. Acknowledge that they don't have any reality. That's best. But maybe that's a little bit hard to do. So at least if we acknowledge that the objects of our attachment are impermanent, that is not as hard. It's not as difficult as understanding their lack of reality. And it really helps. It really brings a lot of benefit. And the benefit that it brings is that it reduces our fixation and clinging and attachment to those objects. To acknowledge that all compounded phenomena, all conditioned phenomena are impermanent is so important. And it's important because this transforms our mind. It transforms our experience when we come to understand, to really know that those objects are not lasting, that they are impermanent. Our body is maybe the same body, right? We're in the same body, but our mind is not the same mind anymore. It's changed, it's different. And what's different about it? The thoughts of the afflictive emotions are reduced. We are more at ease. Our mind is more clear. Our mind is sharper. And this is something that you will be able to notice about yourself. And it's also something that other people will notice about you too, when those kind of changes take place. And therefore, for each of you, all of you, please, I want to ask you to keep this in mind and to bring to mind impermanence again and again and again, and keep it in your heart. It's very important, and it really will help.
Dharma meden jume Chokyi ransam lu sore dedar ngam ke chodeta meden bare yena naya yore cheba chena tope tak zabado dedar name sura chiru rishi ke chodeta tham demba thoba che ya mare yena ya theta ba demba tho matu ba yimbe insulte 딱 시행거래. 대시에버 잡아라 담배 쳐 장거래. 담배 쳐라 장술 만들어봐 레바여 버래. 간살 라라라 최선 따위 루체네. 제바 만보 체나 제바 만보 체네. 롱데레바 만보. 야베 까점라 이체 마셔 버치는 것도 지릭비 제바 체네. 제 초고열에 제 고발에 제 어발에 진짜 체네 또 로라 만보라 퇴섬해야 돼. 대 갈치 붙지 그래. 야 공바 내가 그 룩세. 따뜻 라마 체대지 인지 미지 거. 라마 똑바디 되겠지. 람나 라마 똑바 톰버디 되겠지. 대단한 마쇼나야 라마들 실라게 똑바. 저저 그 똑바 냠뇨 체대 된 바여 괜지. 여네 텔로 로켈네. 되게 이렇게 숭배게 당마들 건바 명학로 산다 벤나 나지 두주 고마츠 망치지 두반 명학로 chen 냠수 랑술 지어리 로도 남바시 원룸 봄아 제대 조섬 대sem지 내로 텐데체는 배체는 냠수 랑네 퇴섬 알라 장바 마보 마체 발라 두반 명학로 따르 첸데 냠레체 로숨 로토 로고 되는 랄라네 참참세게 된데 쇼네 되는 담람 나로 추루 졸람 차제 첨부 이게 돈나 사 주니 주수 dorje zempe 되네 가르쳐 연된 탐지 어디 줄었는데 용아래 총아래 말 총아래 야하나 좋아래 치수표 간진 좋아라 좋아래 대션도 표주 나한테 냠소 랑게 망보질라 되게 좋아요래 다다다가 냠뇨도 표주 나한테 대스 쳐와서 대시아버래 대션도 대션게 냠는 책에 망보지 야나다 코리아다 자판 라서발라 라마 텐데 냠는 나한테 또바통보야 망보야 버래 대신에 타일랜드, 바르마트, 스리랑카 라소발 년도 대비 냠래 나는 라바 추트지 라바 땡긴지 라바 셔럽지 라바 잔다 다주도 컴포터 땡긴 참에 버쳐 가져야 도미 바치바리 추 산지 속에 추 대단한 다시 단다 다르시 내도요래 딱 가져 냠솔랑 좀네 딱 가져야 된대 용 투그래 용 시그래 용 초그래 예나야 딱 남인 레로 밤에 시쇼르스게 딱 아주 다래 쳬베 다테리 쳬바스고 다테 남이 대 남이 알아야 남이 요래라 다두 등산 남이 치스게 남란다테 마로 저중 집에서 아주 보고 졸라 점마제 그 망보 메나 보고도 녀브르고도 와 보고를 점마제 릭다면다 마보 제 кар보 마르보 셈버 링 퉁퉁 마보 지천 얼마 옛날 다 보고 점마제 텐데 여러 다 등산 인터넷 담으로 대폭 가시도 추수 인터넷 따도 보고 잠바 말에 매 개버tin 소다 추수 되는 얼마 다제나 다 파잠블이 파 남들난 파존 로디 남들 탕텐들 민담면데 투두 찌기찌기 깨자셔 하호랍 아주 찰사 찰통 깨자셔 텐데 제가 그 두수 지어봐. 텐데 가르쳐 룩술 지어봐. 다 티페체 냠사를. 다 강가게 랩탑 다 아이폰 켜는 다 롱아 예수한테 티간 도요. 미드 매직절 파자 따세다 깨제셔서도 시다 매겐지. 미키 메테나 페체 캐 차산으로 지시도 가리는 말단 말 깨지시는 강이나서 로로 해도 million drops. Not drops in this Pele not tan drops in it. That's in it. That catching Rilla Tansior. So catching wild horse, a wild animal. Oh, tis a miton that goes to turtle. Drops. Be till a young man. Oh, thing I should meet the mitu to draw dog hand. To catch you to that iPhone, iPad. internet teaching ta tekora longa yesu take wang to jur ta wang jur te de chiyor ngara nga zo do mikin jikten chi kam ta pa wang jur dan jikten chi kam de chuche ke chu wang jur chucha wang jur ta maung jung jur jil ta kan de cha yo ta den de yo ma re ta da ngara so jikten chi kam la chucha 펜토베 추자야 마보 제초 여바래 할레베 추자야고 파초 약합적인 찍는 로고 주는 남들센스 데르 조르 네게 사게 참산 땅게 되는 파 롱바찌가 롱바 샤바텔 니쿠나 니세도 롱바 샤다 일레비어 근데 그 추자된 조르 야르 소요 다 초전에 된 라신 꾼 그럼 치 직대다 나주 심생다 잡아 탐지 짬에 소야기 초샤망보요 예션바지리 쇠차를 단도 속어요 당거요 말 some science says whatever they created in this world those are awful machines it will power of 7 times destroy whole worlds the love to say 근데 가시지 갈 텐데 랍소 또 맛이 진짜 걸 처럼 챙기래 대소서 다 알아서 잠블링 시대에 거나 약합 시대 거나 정바 시대 거나 침상 시대 거나 나라 지구 시대 거나 나라랑 시대 거나 다 메타바데 검네 셈라 착신한테 막 충분한 시대 열다. 착신한테 같이 휴치는 시대요. shede meba takchur. So, Sanje Sumpi Chete, Buddha teaching is actually law of natural redwa. Law of nature. Ma ka tang shaw tene mar dinde re sene ma tempa chika ka tang te nga zo la so tali chi che la le tare mare. Shi shaja deni ke namsha. Lam tapshe ke namsha. Dribu ku ni ke namsha. Namsha tengore te so so ta nga zo shaja la mamo kwa chi chawore. Chulu ke le mele se te ta so so ke samsul jire te pasha. shaja mama ma jinchi go menchi go re. Tende so so tsere batte so shaja jang yore shaja na le chi so yulji namsha gire bal jang ne te tsere ke ta tanda tumje dammen no mangpo chang yore. Tende ta tingsa tsere batsu ke na semji namsha ko la jang ba che yore. Tende ta tura mishu saji kapla tsere tang namba saji peke chöke nangi nyingbo rabate 탑 탐시 난도 초도 줄바 잠인지 잠주 셈 생겼다 셔럽 탐시 나는 초도 줄바 방미 똑배 셔럽 생겼다 오 티니티 돈이인지 닝보 쩐사 자주 줄바 가시 라오 소리 돈이 된인지 손도 줄바 그 인다 말해서 그 세자 코랑기 내수 그 자주 그렇게 가시 지금 마도 그 하고 면도 대란에 따르게 면도 자주 그런 가시 라오 쓰지도 어떤 가시 많이 봐 맞아 들어면 탐체게 그 냠서 라나 된 잠링 데 오늘 타네 잠링 시드 첨보지 차 라시안 강가 되네 대지 푸소 소바도 된바지 용거래 대소자 다 착신시게 돼 tella tene te greedy yongre greedy dangam chambati dangam teke rangshe ganga phong yargere rang sambala pa jo teme meba sogi sagoyor pa meba so pa dose meba sogo samne meba sweba yin chu meba sogo samgen chit meba so yongre 제가 rangshe kun ta dongalin jargere tende sosa chashen ki chwate chegore 셰바니 쪼충 나와네 루케 다 테날 단다 루케슈데 아이폰데 아이폰
In short, all of these unreal, illusory things are fooling us. These phenomena, they're not even real, but they appear, and based on that we are fixated and attached to them, and we're fooled by them. If we just investigate a little bit and examine a little bit, we can come to establish that all of these phenomena are not real at all. They're not truly established from their own side, not even a tiny bit. If we want to know why they're like that or how they're like that, then of course we need to study, right? To study the Dharma. And the Dharma, it's taught step by step how to arrive at the certainty that all of these phenomena are not real. There are different ways, different approaches, and one is the approach of studying and reflecting on the view. There are some people who There are some people who really like to study and examine and investigate, and so they check and examine extensively through studying scriptures, through different types of logical reasoning. They're not willing to just simply accept the scriptures of the Buddha, thinking these are the Buddha's words, but rather they're interested in examining, studying, investigating. And it's perfectly acceptable. It's great for people to study and examine and investigate in that way. It's totally reasonable to investigate and examine, and it's possible to spend years and years studying the Buddha Dharma in this way, investigating and examining and coming to a sense of certainty through that process, the process of studying and reflecting on the view. There's another tradition, though, which is the tradition of training in the pith instructions. For this approach, you must have a qualified guru. It's indispensable. Ideally, should be someone who has very high realization, but it must at the very least be a teacher with some realization who has some kind of real stability and training in the practices of shamatha and vipassana, the generation and the perfection stages, and so on. And then the student has to place their trust in that teacher and receive instructions from that person and put those instructions into practice. And this is really the way that many of the great masters of the past have trained. A lot of the great masters of the past, most of them, it seems, have trained in this way. They began with the contemplation on the four thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma, proceeded into the preliminary practices, the 4 or 5 times 100,000 accumulations, then training in the generation stage, the perfection stage, recitation, and so on. And then finally training in the practice of the nature of mind, training in the recognizing and remaining within the recognition of mind's nature. And this approach doesn't require extensive study and reflection. Here it's not essential to study and reflect extensively, but rather to receive the instructions and to put them into practice. And there are those who put them into practice and do so training for 3 years, for 6 years in retreat, for 9 years in retreat. Some people even make a commitment to stay in retreat for the entire remainder of their life. And they train in the practices like the path of skillful means, the 6 yogas of Naropa, the path of liberation, the practices of Mahamudra. They train in these practices and attain the state of the 13th bhumi, the state of Vajradhara. So this and the qualities that arise out of that training and arriving at that level unfold within them. This has happened in the past. It happened in India. It happened in Tibet. It happened for quite a lot of Buddhist practitioners, Tibetan Buddhist practitioners. And here, the context is Tibetan Buddhism. That's what we're talking about. So I'm mentioning specifically Tibetan Buddhist practitioners, and Tibetan Buddhist practices. But of course, also in China and in Korea and in Japan, there have been a tremendous, countless great practitioners who have trained and achieved great accomplishment through practicing in traditions that survive in those countries. Also through the tradition of the fundamental vehicle of the Buddha Dharma in countries like Thailand and Burma and Sri Lanka. Great practitioners there, again, countless great practitioners there have trained in cultivated the training in discipline, the training in samadhi, and the training in wisdom. And through that training, they achieved the state of an arhat. Again, countless practitioners have done that. So we are all human beings. And just like those great masters of the past have been human beings, and that means what has been possible for them is also possible for us. We can do it if we take up the practice and really train in these ways. What gets in the way of our training, however, is distraction, laziness, procrastination. These are our enemies. This is the enemy of a practitioner. Distraction is the enemy of a practitioner. And in the past, of course, there have been all sorts of distractions. But these days, it's getting more and more serious. There's more and more things to distract us. And our minds are so easily caught up in those distractions. We're so easily swayed by them. Like kids, kids need they like to have lots of different kinds of toys, all sorts of things, white ones and red ones and yellow ones and long ones and short ones and all different kinds of toys. In the past, that's what kids liked, right? These days, kids just look at the internet all day long for hours and hours and hours, and not just kids, old people too, right? Adults, old people, all of us get so caught up in the internet. We spend so much time, scrolling away. In previous times, people like to get together and chat, right? They like to sit around and talk, ha, hoo, hoo, drink some tea, eat a meal, just spend time hanging out, talking. It seems like that tradition is mostly not even really happening anymore in the world. These days, people spend so much more time on their phone, on their laptop. Our body, our speech, and our minds are all focused and directed to our computers and our phones. Even to the point that sometimes, we're so not used to chatting with people anymore that if somebody just comes up and starts chatting with you, then sometimes you feel, why is he talking to me, right? Or somebody even looks at another person and we think like, why is he looking at me? Why are they looking at me? We've become like wild people, like wild animals, like they're domesticated horses, for example. Domesticated horses are the horses that people ride. And then there's wild horses out in the hills. And when a wild horse meets a person, then the horse just runs away immediately. So we're becoming like that. We see another person and then we just run away. We just don't even engage. We feel weird to like look at each other and engage. We've become like that. We've become like that actually from being so controlled by or spending so much time caught up in our devices, our computers, our phones. They are controlling us, right? They've pulled us under their sway. In the past, there was somehow the idea that we were kind of in control of our environments, but now these machines that we've made are really in charge of us to a large degree. We're really caught up in their sway. What will happen in the future, it's hard to say. But of course, it's not the case that technology is not helpful. There's a lot of very helpful and beneficial technologies that have been developed and created, absolutely. But there's also technologies that are quite harmful. In terms of the helpful things, it's much easier to get from one place to another, right? We can travel, we can sleep while we're traveling, we can eat while we're traveling, we can like do everything like while on the road. You just go to the bathroom like en route, right? All of those things. You, fall asleep in one country and wake up on a whole different continent. This is possible. And so there are things like that, which, that seems better than the previous situation. It's more easier for us to travel and to go from place to place. But there are other things that are not better, that are quite harmful. They have made, people have made weapons that can destroy the entire world. And they're still making them. There's not enough of them, apparently. Not enough, world-destroying machinery and weapons. Rinpoche said in English, I've heard some people said that that some of the weapons they've made could destroy the world 7 times over. I don't know. You maybe know a little bit more about these things than I do, but this is what I've heard. And so if we want peace, if we don't want this kind of global destruction, if we want world peace, if we want peace within our own countries, if we want peace in our communities, if we want peace in our families, if we want peace within ourselves, like me alone, if I want peace, even just alone, you can't have that peace without reducing the negative emotions. It's just not possible. Without reducing our attachment, we will not achieve peace at any of those levels, whether it's world peace or personal peace. We can't find that without reducing that kind of attachment. So as long as we have attachments, grasping, clinging, fixation, as long as we have that, we won't have peace. And the Buddha Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, it's really natural law. It's not like the Buddha said that this is how things are, and then we just say, okay, teacher, that's how you said it is, and therefore it's like that. That's not how it is in the context of the Buddha Dharma. The Buddha just taught naturally the way things actually are. He taught the ground, the 2 truths, right? The path, the 2 accumulations, the result, which is the 2 kayas. He taught that if we want to not be confused about what there is to know, if we want to become unconfused, undiluted about what there is to know, we have to train in the Buddha Dharma. And in terms of the outer world, not just Buddhists examine and investigate the outer world, but scientists do as well. They have done a lot of research and a lot of investigation and examination about the way things are in the outer world. And they've gotten a lot of results from that investigation. A lot of benefit has come from that. These days, it seems that scientists are interested in more turning towards learning about the inner world as well. And here there's been a lot of dialogue in the 21st century, right, between the scientific community and the Buddhist community. The Buddhist community has studied quite a lot about the inner world, the mind. And what's taught in the Buddha Dharma is that the most beneficial, the best skillful method that there is love and compassion and bodhicitta. And the supreme form of wisdom is wisdom that realizes the absence of a self. And if we have this kind of realization of emptiness with a core of compassion, then this is what makes it possible, makes it much, much easier to gain or accomplish liberation. So this is something that we need to know about, because if we don't know about that, we can't train in it, we can't practice. But if we really train in this, if we cultivate this, then this is what can bring us to genuine peace in the whole world. Peace for oneself, happiness for oneself, peace and happiness for others, world peace. When we have attachment and clinging and grasping, then we're greedy. And when we're greedy, then we act in ways that make everyone suffer. We make ourselves suffer, we make other people suffer. We think, oh, I'm going to just do something to get rid of, I want to just, overcome him over there, get rid of him, get rid of that other person over there. Then we think then that will get, then the problem will be solved. But the problem is you do that and then it comes right back at you. And then not only do they suffer, but you also suffer. And so when we have that kind of attachment and greed, then all we're doing is causing suffering both for others as well as for ourselves. We all suffer when that happens. Because again, our minds are so gullible, and these appearances are so seductive. These phenomena that appear to us are so seductive. And actually the most seductive thing, the thing that's best at fooling us these days, is the iPhone.
What I try to say, iPhone pento yebe lega mangpo che yore, te sonso pento yebe lega che yore la, te sonsa pento yebe ke lega cheba tela nga zu gasur gore, te mayimba nga zu namyengi le mangpo che yore, te nga zu tersong guamsum cheke la, te parchi tang yore, te ganga shen goya che re la, teni. Actually, this talk is for whom? For Himalayans. And I am in Nepal, and every year the Nepalese interest Dharma is growing, very growing, and it's very touching. Some old lady, old man, they say, oh, I like to chant prayer, but I don't know what to do. Now I'm 60 years old, I'm 70 years old. And my hope is before last breath time, I like to chant some Buddha's words, chant, and during the chanting, I want to die. If that happens, I will get next life some strong connection with the Dharma, isn't it? So please help me, they're saying that. So then, how to help? So languages is important. In this world, there's so many different type of language. A language is very important. And some language is good for science. Some language is good for business. And some is like Tibetan language is good for dharmic. And why? Because past, those leaders and publics, they put whole heart to Dharma knowledge. So there is the thousands years, they're really refining and checking, and they like to make the Dharma terminology is exactly matching with Sanskrit or some Pali. And they put whole heart, actually, their wealth, their intelligence, they put for Dharma. So now, in the world, many scholars, they know the Tibetan language is very, very flexible and very, very profound, very, very correct to use a dharmic knowledge, to learn philosophy, number one. Even to chant is beautiful. It meaning touch to your heart. So there is in the world, people like to learn Tibetan language more and more. Like this, we have Ranjung Yishin Institute. This year, over 300 are studying, and also that many of them very interested to learn Tibetan. Of course, also Sanskrit, Pali. So we make this program for Nepalese in Gompa, the Khenpo, Lama, Lubin, they taught Pas. In monastery, there's 4-month language program, 1 month for Ondo program, 5 months we, monastery, serving to the people, whoever interest, but majority is Himalayan. So now that program is ending. So I want to say, all of you put a lot of interest, and all of you put very happily you're studying, and your language knowledge is getting better and better. You can chant clearly and very precisely. Also, the Khenpo's teaching meditation and Jula Olam and liberation, and also Chö, and now Heart Sutra will teach, because Chö is connected with Heart Sutra, and Uttara Tantra Shastra, Ju Lama. So now in monastery, there's many, we have monks are become scholar practitioners. Also in the world, there's many Westerns are become, they live in sort of live in casual life, but their knowledge Dharma is very rich, and they're also practicing. They're also scholar practitioners. So past, they're also taught. I think many of you know, and whoever not know, please. The teachings are still in record, and why I say today different words. So point is how important the knowledge of Dharma, how profound, how deep, how meaningful, how helpful, ever helpful. But this knowledge, Dharma Gyan knowledge, need to learn from what language? Yes, in Pali also exists. Yes, in Sanskrit also, and also in Chinese, in the past in Mongolian, also in other languages. And right now we're talking about Tibetan language. Language and speak is connected, right? If you know Tibetan perfect speaking and reading, and if you know reading meaning, then you can pick up Dharma quite easily. Zambalila Datu Rikpa Sang the Kalchambore, Purjike Shebri Shavala Tambo, Datu Rikpa Yapochi Shankure, Datu Rikpa Yapochi Shena, Ane Tai Sumda Nyanga, Samji Yaposhambayana, then the judge of Shungtang, the Samo Ti La Soba, Ti La Sobeki, 고정에 로로로 신기래 이나의 14번 신고셔나 되네야 라마 캠블로 변케 nga ani ju shabi shi jun se da nga zo pe na ba sa che pe ke kal shi shu chi kar se na wang jun long jun donga kari jana she ba la shi jun se da kar chim bare te so ta te ta bu ke wang lo ti me nga 다 도가 장고는 이게 지고 그래 이게 나네 배 이게 데 나르지 매포쳐다 나르지 배배 미랍 속에 될 도낭 쳔보지 제베게 가진기 데배배게 배게 다 라버도 배 추스디 간면집 추스 무슨 속바지 요래 다 저런서 장기 챙기래 대소자 때 배 롭죠 젠도 여캔솔라 때는 아주 인터넷 터네 채나발라 근데 인치kel에 필이 라도 필이 어떤 부터 삼 다다다 필이 터네 요래 모든데 랍존나로나 드링 추튼 대삼이 아니야 산이 야 더도 주긴
Okay, so iPhones, of course, there are lots of good things that you can do with your phone, and so we should rejoice in that, and we can use our phones for that. But you also know that there's a lot of time that we spend just caught up in distraction on our phones. And what that does is it acts as an obstacle for study, reflection, and meditation. You all know that. So it's important for us to try to avoid this. And then Rinpoche spoke in English for a little while about the summer program that's coming to an end. And then finally in Tibetan, he again said, in the world, if we want to really learn language, it's important to really study grammar. Then if we study grammar, then we can study spelling and composition and poetics and all of those things. And when we've done that, when we've learned a language in that way, then we can read texts in that language. If you're reading texts, if you study Tibetan in this way, and then if you're reading Tibetan text, just through having studied the language and the grammar and so on, composition and so on, then you could get a rough idea by reading those texts, even Dharma texts, you can get a rough idea of what it means. But in order to really understand in detail, to really have a deep understanding, it's important to receive the teaching on that text from a teacher, from a lama, from a lupan, because there is a lineage of explanation. There is a lineage of explaining these texts. And when we receive that, it becomes so much clearer to us. We understand it so much more deeply. In Tibetan Buddhism, we talk about empowerment, right? And the lineage of empowerments. And then there's a lineage of reading transmission of text that's passed on. And there's also a lineage of the instruction, the teachings on a text, which are passed on. This is the case for the sutric teachings as well as the tantric teachings. And in Tibet in general, when we receive empowerment, or if we're receiving a reading transmission, or if we're receiving some kind of instruction, some kind of pith instruction, in any of those cases, generally, we rely upon texts, Dharma texts. And the fact that those Dharma texts survive in the world is due to the kindness of the Tibetan ancestors, the Tibetan people's ancestors, is through their incredible kindness for preserving these teachings so that they are still available for us today. And in this way, the Tibetan language is quite rich, and in particular with respect to Dharma terminology, it's extremely rich. It's extremely precious, and there's so much benefit that comes from that. And so all of you in the summer program that has been offered here in Nepal, it was online this year, it was offered for free. I'd like to say I'm so happy that you have studied in this program, and to request you to continue learning, to continue your studies. So today's teaching session, Dharma teaching, will conclude here, and I'll continue tomorrow.
If any of you, if you think you want to learn Tibetan, language and speaking, because that will make you do good business. That is wrong. And if you want to learn a language and speaking, English or Chinese or some others is much better. The Tibetan language is not popular. Why? Because through Tibetan language you not make money. But now, luckily, the whole world knows. But we need to be open mind. When I think, in Himalayan, Bhutan, Sikkim, Lada, Garsha, Mentawang, Pirti, and Mongolia. So, what kind of religion? Buddha Dharma. What kind of Buddha Dharma? Tibet Buddha Dharma. Why is it Tibet Buddha Dharma? The Dharma texts all in Tibetan. So Tibetan Dharma. Tibetan Buddhism. Kanjur is Tibetan, Tenjur is Tibetan. But they have so attached to their local language. That's good, very good. Same in Tibet. Tibet also we have many local speaking. Local speaking, like Amdo, Kam, U, Zhang. If you not listen carefully, you not understand. They are Tibetan, because local dialect. But luckily, we use one Dharma terminology. Dharma. So that is, if we chant Kanjur or Tenjur, everybody understand. If we chant, everybody can chant together. So listen, one example. English language is very popular in the world. Yeah. So in America, what kind of language? English language. And Canada, what kind of language? Canada language. No, English language. And then Australia, New Zealand, English language. But then they like to say, oh, I learn English, I speak English. So the English language is very popular, and the business, technology, science, the dealing is very easy. Otherwise, in America has one language, Australia has another language, and Canada, New Zealand, other countries, and very complicated. So, thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I need to translate. Huh? Okay. Please translate other language.
I think they did simultaneous translation, Rinpoche. I think
Okay.
I was watching them.
Yeah. If anyone like to learn Buddha Dharma, especially Mahayana Sutra, especially Uma, in Tibetan language is very helpful. Top of that, if any of you, if you're interested to learn from A to Z, Tankirk or Vajrayana, a Tibetan language is very helpful. In the world, right now, in Buddhist teaching, second largest is in Chinese. Chinese are very fortunate, and how many years before in Tibet, China has already Dharma. So these days for us, very interesting, modern time, a lot of technology, we can discuss it all over the world, but it takes only 1-2 minutes. And not immediately we can talk each other, discuss. But one important thing, word is Dharma. We don't know how to translate in English, in Germany, in other languages. That exists in Chinese. Fu, Fa, they call Fa, Dharma. Sanje, Chötang, Gentun. So those who, you guys translators, You need to think how to translate Dharma in other languages. You go to now time came to discuss how to translate Dharma. Okay, today my talk is finished. They already translated. Daki sonam dini simchen tamchi malupa dekwa tamchi paanani dadi gewa chabarshu. Chancho samdan mindarshin chancho chola shualorshu. Sanje namchi yongsongshi dujele na pangwarshu. Lobe shualaki chonchu chenpe nane tene malam kapsala tendaki sungtu ti ngaran samla chita penpo chita gabo chichung te sonsa te ngiyayan dengiyo Dr. Catherine, can you translate? Dak sonam dini.
And thus, by all the merit I have gained, may every being, leaving none aside, abandon all their evil ways, embracing goodness now and evermore. From bodhicitta may they never separate, and constantly engage in bodhisattva deeds, and may they be accepted as disciples by the Buddhas, and turn away from what is demon's work. These are the words composed by the great master Shantideva. He included them as part of the dedication chapter of the Bodhicharya Avatara. And I found these words to be so beneficial for me, and I like them so much, so I like to repeat them again and again.
I have one question. I've seen many translators. Did all of you translate it? Already finished? What I say makes sense, is logical. What I say is common sense. Is this common logic? Is this common need? There's three questions. What I say is common sense or not? Common logic or not? Common need or not? Three. Yeah, I like to hear. Chris, your health okay? Chris, your health okay?
So.
I will contact you later. I'm so happy seeing all of you. Doctor, all of you did translation went well? Shubham? And is this and? Wow. Aruso bani. Mo ali yenni parcha. Wow. Our Russian monk. Are you translating Uma Chawashirap Jalpa? Yeah, it's very important. You talk with Thomas closely. And the Mabja was commentary is really very clearly. Abraham said. Oh. Denmark, Eric, how are you, Eric? Eric La, how are you? How's my talk? Oh, good. In Denmark, quite early, no? What time now? Cut it. Bena. Morning. Austria, very early, my goodness. What time? Austria over there? So, what time, Mickey? Mickey, what time over there? Mickey, what time? Huh?
8 o'clock.
Huh? 8 o'clock. Maybe not. So nice thing. Wow, so many in Austria. I'm thinking all of you're all very lucky. I hope we will set up soon in Austria, Buddhist university. Please pray. Denmark. Oh. Huh? Do. Dharma house. Denmark. Oh, Denmark. Denmark also many. Thank you. Eric, thank you. All of Tara. Wow, very nice. Okay, tomorrow I will continue. Thank you so much. That's it. Spain. Spanish. You are a student. You need to translate well. Your responsibility. Whoever study in the Ranjung Yishi Institute, if they not translate correctly, very shame. If they translate correctly, it's normal. If they not translate correctly, very shameful. Thank you. Okay. Aru. Come California. Oh, come California. You all from Antioch student. Most of you from Antioch student. I feel sad. Our Bande passed away. So nice. Oh. What time there? What time in America?
11 p.m.
Night, huh? Okay. Very good. Please enjoy, study well, practice well. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Catherine Latujiche, you translate very well. Jack, thank you.
Jack, thank you.
Once I got out.
Okay, bye-bye.